Well, I want to tell you a little bit more because in previous videos we've talked a lot about how they did it, but I haven't talked about three aspects of it, particularly the underhand and overhand method of cutting. The old cutters would refer to three different things in almost conversational tone. They would talk about offhand work, underhand work, and overhand work. Offhand has to do, in fact this is mentioned in a book or two, it has to do with the blowing procedure. You blow something offhand, you blow it free and totally unencumbered, unaided, unassisted. It's like in the Marine Corps when you shoot a rifle offhand. You stand on the firing line and you hold it at your shoulder with no aid and no assistance and you just fire at the target. That's offhand, unaided, unassisted. The two other terms, overhand and underhand, have to do with the cutting process. First, I'd like to talk to you about the overhand method. And the overhand procedure involves the intaglio work, the close work where the cutter and his little tiny tool are working directly face-to-face with the object. Now the camera is going to turn and focus in on a beautiful piece of intaglio work and show you some of the detail. Now this type of work was done freehand. The piece came to the cutter or to the engraver with these panels in there like they are, and the rest of it was basically a drawing. And he, being an artist, took this drawing and put it on the piece, and he worked with a tiny tool similar to a dentist drill, little copper wheels. And these, you can watch this being done at the Corning factory today on Steuben pieces, and not nearly this elaborate, but they do it, and there's a plate glass window. You can stand right there and watch the person within a few feet away. But here, because his hands were on top of the glass, in other words, his hands were over the glass, this is called overhand work, and he worked eyeball to eyeball with the piece. There was ample opportunity for him to see every little detail that he was doing. Okay, that's overhand. Now the majority of all the work that we've seen tonight, virtually, has been done underhand. And underhand is the real separating the men from the boys. Now as I move this picture out of the way, I'll slide this book over and ask the cameraman to focus in on this photograph here of this worker. Now this happens to be a picture from the Libby book. The worker is cutting the world's largest piece of glass at that time. This is the top part of a two-part punch bowl, and it was made for the 1904 World's Fair. The piece measures, with the base on it, 25 inches high and 25 inches across. As you can imagine, well, as a matter of fact, it states directly under the picture, and those of you with the Libby book by Carl Fauster can look it up on page 82. It tells you under there the blank before they started cutting weighed 143 pounds. As we learned on a previous video, one of the reasons the companies got away from blown blanks and started using figured blanks is because they didn't lose the 30% of glass on the floor that they lost with this one. This was obviously a blown blank way back then, and when they finished it, if they lost 30%, it went from 143 pounds to 100 pounds. Now the next page shows the same punch bowl, but at the most precarious time of the cutting. This is when they are doing the roughing procedure. And it's a very faint picture, but here's a strong young man holding the top to that punch bowl, and you can see the lines on the bowl that are drawn with probably red lead paint so that the rougher can follow those lines, but that was the most delicate, precise part. And with an item that weighs, probably the top of that uncut weighed 100 pounds. So the picture attributes the man in the middle, the elderly gentleman, as being the main rougher. The man over here on the left, who's also assisting, probably was making sure that there wasn't too much heat buildup. He probably had his fingertips on the blank near the wheel just to feel for the heat, because as we learned in a previous video also, they had wet clay in their hands to absorb the shock, and they put their fingertips near the wheel so they could feel for the heat, and they listened for the pitch of the wheel. Now, on a blank the size of this, of course it's impossible for the young man to get his hands all the way around by that wheel, so he had to have help. And on big pieces like this, often they use leather harnesses to help support them. But the point is, this is underhand work. This is work like a bowl, like anything we've been looking at, where the wheel is on the other side of the glass. In other words, there is a layer of glass between your cutter's eyeball and the wheel that he's working with. Now, on a bowl or a tray or a plate, if you can visualize, he's working on the back side of it. He can easily see what he's doing and where he's been and how he's following the lines. However,